The night I finally told my son no felt like snapping a bone that had been hairline cracked for years. It didn't make noise so much as it changed the shape of our family in an instant. I'm not proud of how long I let things slide, how many times I reached for my wallet to keep the peace, to protect him from consequences, but that night at my kitchen table, with a dripping faucet ticking like a metronome, I realized I was done trying to buy quiet. If you've ever gone through something like this, drop a comment. I'm listening. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comment section. Okay, deep breath. Let me tell you everything. The house in Haddon Ridge still carried Diana's hum, that whisper of order she left behind. She'd been gone 3 years, but on some evenings, if the light hit the hallway just right, I could imagine her leaning in the doorway, arms folded, smiling like she could hold the whole place together with that look. On the table were 2 plates of pot roast, going cold, roasted carrots, wrinkled at the edges, and a receipt book I kept in the junk drawer for my loans. I used to call them gifts. Somewhere along the line, the word changed. Logan sat across from me in a faded hoodie, eyes ringed the way mine get when I've been up on a double shift. He was 29, married, smart when he wanted to be, and lately he wanted to be smart only when it came to shortcuts. Allie, his wife, perched beside him, twisting her wedding band, mascara smudged from tears that hadn't quite fallen yet. She'd rehearsed the sympathy, soft voice, quivering smile, as if the right performance might turn a no into a, well, okay, this one last time. "Dad," Logan said, trying for steady and landing on impatient. "We're short again this month. Rent and a couple bills. It's just a bridge." I stared at the yellow legal pad between us, where I'd started keeping track, numbers in my handwriting, neat and ashamed. Moving help, car repair, emergency dentist visit. Back in March, I sold my canoe gear I'd been saving for a Boundary Waters trip, my retirement promise to myself. The gear had sat by the garage door like a dare. Now it was gone, and I still hadn't bought peace. "How much?" I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear it. "$2,000 would fix everything," Allie slipped in, eyes wide and hopeful. "We've got interviews lined up. Things are turning around." I put the fork down and laced my fingers to keep from fidgeting. The faucet dripped again. Somewhere outside, Mrs. Randall's porch light snapped on. She always fed a stray cat around 7. I wished I could step into that small kindness and avoid the next minute of my life. "I can't do it." The words were simple. The silence after was not. It expanded in the room, made the clock louder. Logan leaned back, as if distance would make the sentence malfunction. Allie swallowed a breath and aimed for a new angle. "Hank, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't—" "I know you wouldn't ask if you didn't think I'd say yes. But I'm not your bank. I'm your father." Logan's jaw worked. He looked older and younger at once. The boy who used to throw a baseball against the side of the house for hours, and the man who now watched me like I was a vending machine that had swallowed his dollar. "You helped when Mom was here." He shot to landed. He knew it would. She would have understood. Diana's name didn't open my wallet. It opened a flood I was tired of standing in. I folded the legal pad closed, slid it under the edge of the placemat like I could tuck away the last 2 years of rescue missions. "Your mother believed in helping. She also believed help had to teach you something. What is this teaching you?" He laughed once, sharp. "That you'd rather hoard money than be there for your son." I thought of the box in my bedroom closet. Pay stubs, unopened letters from my pension, a photo of Diana in a denim jacket on a windy pier. I don't have a lot to hoard. I have a lot to keep from disappearing.
Allie's tears showed up right on cue, one after another. Theatrical, but not entirely fake. "Maybe we could just borrow your card for a week." "I'm not giving you my card," I said. "And I'm not signing anything else." I nudged the receipt book farther away. "You both need a plan that isn't me." He pushed back from the table so hard a fork clattered onto tile. "We have a plan. He caught himself, forced his hands flat. "I have 2 callbacks. Northline Tech called me this afternoon." "Good," I said, trying to mean it. "Then you won't need 2,000 from me." He looked past me, through me, into some version of me that would always fold. I didn't move. The faucet ticked. The old ceiling fan chopped the air like a tired airplane. My chest felt tight in the weird way it does when anger overlaps with grief. Was I punishing him or finally choosing myself? What was I supposed to do? Let my son burn down both our futures just so I didn't have to watch the fire? "I'm going upstairs," I said, because I needed a door between us. "There's leftovers in the fridge." Allie scuffed her chair back. "We'll figure it out," she murmured. But she didn't look at Logan when she said it. She looked at me. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the dent in the mattress where Diana used to read with her knees tucked under a blanket. I could still smell her hand lotion sometimes, phantom and unfair. On the nightstand was a ceramic bowl with spare change and a pile of keys that didn't go to anything anymore. I took a breath and felt something loosen in my ribs. Boundaries weren't clean lines. They were drawn with shaky hands while your heart pounded and someone you loved begged you to erase them. The floorboard in the hallway squeaked. Their voices rose and fell. Logan's sharp, Allie's coaxing, the same duet we'd played for a year. I stared at the ceiling where the paint had developed a tiny crack like a vein. I tried to imagine what Diana would say. Her advice always sounded like the way she folded towels. Crisp, repeatable, deeply practical. "Don't rescue him from the lesson," she'd say. "Walk beside him while he learns it." But what if he refused the lesson? How long was I supposed to walk? I must have sat there 20 minutes. When I went back down, the pot roast had been cleared. The legal pad was gone. I found it later, tucked neatly back in the junk drawer as if erasing evidence could erase the conversation. Logan stood by the sink, rinsing a plate he hadn't eaten from. Jaw tight again, eyes dry now and hard. "Congrats on the callbacks," I said, because I meant it. "If it's real, I'll grill this weekend. Invite Evan over, make it a thing." He nodded without looking at me. "It's real," he said. The words sounded shiny, like a coin held up to the light. "You'll see." Allie thanked me for dinner. The way she said it made it sound like an apology and a threat at the same time. They left a few minutes later. I stood at the sink, turned the faucet handle until the drip stopped, and stared at my reflection in the dark window. Tired, stubborn, still the father of a man I didn't quite recognize. I dried my hands on a dish towel that Diana had embroidered with a little blue sparrow and realized I'd done the bravest thing I'd done since we buried her. I had told our son that his future wasn't mine to pay for. The house settled around me. The porch light across the street clicked off. Somewhere, a car door thumped and a dog barked twice, annoyed. I put the receipt book on top of the fridge where I wouldn't reach for it by habit. I took the legal pad to my desk and wrote in block letters across the top, what I will and won't do. It felt corny and 12-step-ish, and I kept going anyway. My hands shook, just a little. I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of the part of me that still wanted to cave. In bed, I didn't sleep much. The fan kept chopping the air. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Logan at 10, mud on his knees, grinning like the world couldn't break him. I had believed that so fiercely. Now I lay awake believing something else, something simpler. I could love my son and still save myself. Both could be true, even if one made the other hurt.
By the next afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Logan that read like a trumpet blast. "Northline Tech offer, starting Monday." There was even a picture of a clean, neat email on his cracked screen. Logo in blue, a block of welcome copy, numbers that would make most people breathe easier. My stomach lifted in a small, guilty flutter. Maybe he was right. Maybe the no I said last night nudged something honest in him. Was this the turnaround I'd been begging the universe for? He and Allie came by at 5, arms full of good news and store-bought optimism. Allie brought a tub of potato salad, the kind with too much mustard, and a pie with a plastic dome. Logan had a haircut and a pressed shirt I hadn't seen before. The house smelled like cut grass and dish soap. The day had that mild Midwestern brightness that makes you want to stand outside for no reason. I told them I'd fire up the grill, texted Evan next door to swing by, and tried on the feeling of ordinary pride like a jacket I hadn't worn since Diana died. We eased into celebration. I scooped charcoal from the bag in the garage, arranged the briquettes in a pyramid that would have made my high school shop teacher proud, and splashed starter fluid with the lazy confidence of a man who has lit 100 small fires. Logan hovered by the patio table, telling me about onboarding schedules and acronyms, about a project manager named Trent who loved my initiative, about benefits that sounded decent even to someone who has haggled over co-pays. Allie filmed him on her phone as if we might need proof later that this buoyant version of my son existed. "Medium rare?" I asked, "because you don't jinx good news by changing the steak order." "Always," he said, that old boyish curve in his mouth. Inside, I carried a tray of steaks to the counter, rubbed them with salt and cracked pepper, and pulled my navy canvas work backpack off the hook by the back door to grab the meat thermometer I kept in the side pocket. That bag went everywhere with me. Job sites, hardware store, hospital once when Evan had knee surgery. It held my daily life in zipped compartments, tape measure, work gloves, multi-bit screwdriver, a notebook where I sketched repairs like I was trying to remember how things fit together. I slid the thermometer out, zipped the pocket, and set the backpack on the living room chair next to the old floor lamp Diana used to read under. Through the kitchen window, I could see Allie arranging paper plates and Logan scrolling, probably texting friends the way people do when they want witnesses for their best day. I stepped back into the yard and the coals caught, thin tongues of flame licking the edges, turning black to gray in steady breath. "Smells like I'm finally using the grill cover you made me buy," I said. We laughed, soft and unremarkable, the way families laugh when they're choosing not to remember the last fight. 10 minutes later, I ducked inside to fetch a spice rub Evan swears by and to wash my hands. The kitchen was quiet. That soft quiet of a house that trusts you. I reached for the tin, then paused at the window. In the reflection, my face layered with the backyard, I saw Logan step through the sliding door like a man returning to the scene he'd rehearsed in his head. He glanced once toward the yard, once toward the hallway, and then he walked straight to the living room chair where my backpack sat. I didn't move. Some part of me understood before my mind did. He unzipped the top. His hand came out with something wrapped in dark tissue paper, a careful little bundle you'd see on a jeweler's counter. He palmed it into the bag without hesitation, slid the zipper closed, and smoothed the canvas with a gesture that wasn't his. He stood there for a beat, gathered his breath, and walked back outside wearing the same easy grin he had a minute ago.
The sink water ran loud, though I hadn't turned it on. I dried my hands on a dish towel, then held the counter's edge to steady the buzz that started in my elbows. The kitchen timer ticked toward nothing. I could feel my heart beat where my wedding ring used to sit. I didn't want to be right. I didn't want to be the kind of father who watched his son like a stranger at a pawn shop. What kind of son sets a trap for his father? I walked into the living room, the way you walk into a dark theater, eyes adjusting, body careful, a little ashamed of being there at all. The backpack looked like it always did, scuffed, loyal, a practical thing that never asked for more than a hook and a job to do. I pulled the zipper. My fingers found the tissue-wrapped object exactly where he'd placed it, tucked beside my notebook like a secret confessing itself. The paper had that waxy feel, the color of ash. I unwrapped it slowly, each crackle too loud in my ears. The ring came out heavy and bright. A pair cut stone set in platinum, the facets catching the afternoon light and throwing it back at me like a dare. It wasn't costume. Weight has a way of telling the truth. The stone was icy, flawless to my untrained eye, and the setting was the kind that announces itself before its owner speaks. Whoever bought it had a plan for it. Whoever stole it did too. I wrapped it again with hands that felt too big, tucked the little package into my jeans pocket, and wiped my palm on my thigh as if light could smear. I put the thermometer back in the bag,
zipped everything, and stood still enough to hear the refrigerator motor hum kick on. My mind did math without numbers. Motive, opportunity, sequence, the call from Northline Tech, the haircut, the performance outside, the upcoming Monday start that would conveniently exist while someone else dealt with a missing ring. The back door squeaked the way it always squeaked. "You good in there, Dad?" Logan called, voice bright and easy, like a man checking on a friend's playlist. "Need my gloves," I said. "Grab 'em for me?" "Sure," he said, and stayed outside, didn't set foot on the tile. He was keeping distance from the bag he'd already violated. I felt something harden in my chest that wasn't anger exactly. It was something older, the part of a person that wakes you when a smoke alarm chirps in the middle of the night. I climbed the stairs, counting like I always did. 1, 2, skipped the third because it squeaks, 4, 5. Their bedroom door was open, the neutral master everyone stages for real estate photos someday. Allie's sweater lay across a chair. A floral hand lotion sat open on the dresser. The room smelled like lavender and barbecue smoke drifting in from the yard. I opened the top drawer first, too obvious, socks and folded t-shirts. The second, underwear, a tangle of receipts, a belt with a cracked edge. The middle drawer made a small wooden sigh as it slid. I made a nest between rolled socks, a neat little pocket like a bird builds, and slipped the tissue-wrapped ring into the space. Then I shifted a pair of gym shorts over it. Not enough to look buried, just enough to look like a careless hiding spot someone would reach for first. On my way out, I paused, looked at their framed wedding photo on the dresser. I was smiling in it, hair a little darker, tie crooked because Diana hadn't been there to fix it. I didn't recognize the man anymore, not fully. I closed the drawer with careful fingers and wiped the knob with the tail of my shirt. Old job habits you don't forget. There was no drama in my body, no shaking, no whisper of triumph, only the calm of getting something dangerous out of my house. Downstairs, the timer still ticked toward nothing. I picked up a bottle of steak sauce I didn't intend to use, the prop you carry when you need a reason for your absence, and stepped back into the gold of the yard. "How's the fire?" I asked. "Perfect," Logan said, flipping steaks that hadn't needed flipping yet. He didn't meet my eyes. Allie handed me a plate like a peace offering. Somewhere down the block, a siren yipped and fell quiet, swallowed by distance. Evan texted to say he was running late, his knee acting up. I stared at my son across heat and smoke and picnic wear. I thought about the ring upstairs, the weight of it in a drawer that wasn't mine, the choice I'd made that would look like betrayal to him and survival to me. I salted the steaks again just to do something with my hands. The sky slid toward evening blue. The yard smelled clean and ordinary. The world looked almost normal from 5 feet away. I knew it wasn't. I knew the next knock on my door would carry a different kind of invitation, and for the second time in 2 days, I understood that loving Logan and protecting myself had become 2 separate, necessary acts. The steaks hissed, sending up a ribbon of smoke that curled over the maple tree and disappeared into a sky the color of dishwater blue. I set the tongs down to rest my hands. For a second, it all looked harmless again. Paper plates, the cheap folding chairs Diana once scolded me for keeping, Logan pretending concentration at the grill. Then 3 car doors slammed out front in quick succession, followed by the pop of radios and the muffled cadence of voices you recognize long before you know what's being said. The side gate latch scraped metal on metal. 2 figures came through the gap and squared to the yard, not unkind, not tentative. The woman led, dark slacks, blazer, hair pinned back with the kind of efficiency that doesn't care if it flatters. She lifted her hand, palm down, and everything in me went still on command. "Detective Mara Quinn, Haddon Ridge PD," she said, badge already out, voice firm but pitched at a neighborly volume. "Is Henry Mercer present?" "It's Hank," I said, raising my hands chest high without thinking. "I'm here." The man behind her, Officer Javier Soto, watched the angles, our hands, the table, the slider to the kitchen.
He had that soft-footed readiness of someone who could sprint or stand for an hour and look exactly the same either way. A third uniform lingered near the gate. Allie froze mid-step, the plastic dome of the pie glinting in her hands. Logan turned toward Detective Quinn with a kind of breathless relief that made my stomach drop. "It's him," he said, pointing straight at me as if we were picking teams. "I saw the ring in his backpack inside. It's the one from Silver and Sage, the big pear cut. He showed it to me and said not to tell." The words spilled out polished and ready like he'd practiced in the car. My heart did that quiet drop an elevator does when it settles at a floor. I made my mouth form a calm I didn't feel. "Detective," I said, "you're welcome to look at whatever you need." Quinn's gaze slid to my hands, then to the spatula I'd let clatter onto the pavers. "We received a report about stolen jewelry tied to a robbery yesterday, a ring matching that description. Mr. Mercer, would you consent to a search of the bag your son just mentioned?" "Yes," I said. "It's in the living room on a chair. You can open every pocket." Allie let the pie dome thwack onto the table. "Hank," she breathed, eyes glassy, voice rehearsed to sound accidental. "I told him to return it if he found it." She reached for Logan's arm and missed by an inch. Quinn nodded once at Soto. "Officer, with me." We moved as a small, awkward group, me in front, the officers a half step behind, Logan practically trotting to keep up. The slider stuck for its usual half-second and then let go. The living room smelled like charcoal and lemon cleaner. My backpack sat where I'd left it, navy canvas looking suddenly conspiratorial under the lamplight. "Sir," Soto said, "is this your bag?" "Yes," I answered. My voice came out level. My shoulders remembered what it felt like to be 10 and told to show your pockets. "I saw him put it in the front pocket," Logan said too quickly, tapping the zipper with a finger that didn't shake, "wrapped in dark paper." Soto's eyes flicked to Quinn, who gave a small nod. He opened the top, then the main compartment, laying out items methodically on the coffee table, as if building a case against chaos. Notebook with curling edges, leather work gloves scarred at the fingertips, tape measure, the multi-bit screwdriver, the thermometer I'd used 2 hours earlier, a pouch with Allen keys, an energy bar crushed to a brick. No ring.
He shifted to the smaller pockets, checking seams with 2 practiced fingers, using the back of his knuckle to feel where eyesight lies. He tipped the bag and a few screws rolled like marbles to the edge of the table and stopped. He checked again. He was thorough, but there was nothing left to be thorough about. Quinn wrote something in a small notebook and kept her face neutral. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "do you have any other bags in the house?" "No," I said, "just that one." I looked at Logan then, not because I could fix anything with my eyes, but because it felt childish not to. "You said you saw it inside this bag?" His face didn't move for a beat. Then the tiniest fissure, quick as a blink, a flash of confusion, the body forgetting its line before the mouth remembered it. "He must have moved it," he said, and reached for wounded. "He heard the sirens and—" "I was on the patio with you when they pulled up," I said. The sentence landed plain and soft. I was surprised by the lack of heat in my voice. "I didn't touch the bag." Allie stepped closer. Tears started their careful descent. "Maybe he put it in the garage?" She offered to no one in particular, her gaze skittering to everything except the officer and the backpack and me. Soto glanced toward the kitchen. Quinn's pen paused. She looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, do you have any other bags in the house?" "No," I said, "just that one." I looked at Logan then, not because I could fix anything with my eyes, but because it felt childish not to. "You said you saw it inside this bag." His face didn't move for a beat. Then the tiniest fissure, quick as a blink, a flash of confusion, the body forgetting its line before the mouth remembered it. "He must have moved it," he said, and reached for wounded. "He heard the sirens and—" "I was on the patio with you when they pulled up," I said. The sentence landed plain and soft. I was surprised by the lack of heat in my voice. I didn't touch the bag. Alice stepped closer. Tears started their careful descent. Maybe he put it in the garage, she offered to no one in particular, her gaze skittering to everything except the officer and the backpack and me. Soto glanced toward the kitchen. Quinn's pen paused. She looked at me. Mr. Mercer, do you have any jewelry in your immediate possession? Just to close the loop. I patted my jeans out of habit. Keys, wallet, phone, nothing else. The phantom burn at my thigh from earlier made me swallow hard. Go ahead, I said. She watched me, not pouncing, just watching, like she was measuring whether the man in front of her matched the moment she was seeing. Soto took a tiny flashlight and checked the cushions, under the chair, the floor around the table. He moved quietly, the way careful people do when they respect the rooms they enter. We stood there in a bubble of domestic absurdity, steak scorching on an unattended grill, a pie sweating under plastic, the family backpack emptied under the coffee table like a museum exhibit about my life. What was I supposed to do? Beg the officers to trust a father's instinct over a son's performance? The closest I came to pleading was to stay very still and let them see the stillness. A crackle on Quinn's radio. She tilted her head, listened, then answered quietly. Copy. She looked at Logan, then at me, then at the staircase that rose off the hallway like a line leading somewhere we hadn't looked yet. She didn't move toward it, not yet. She was giving the lie room to collapse under its own weight. I caught it then. The flicker. Panic crossed Logan's face in a thin electric stripe and vanished, replaced by righteous anger polished to a shine. He tried to push us all back into the scene he'd written. Check his truck, he urged, voice climbing as if volume weighs more than facts. Quinn closed the notebook and slid the pen into the spine. We will, she said evenly. She glanced at Soto. Let's finish canvassing this level first. Soto nodded and moved toward the dining room. Allie dabbed at a tear that didn't need dabbing. Out back, a spat of fat hissed from the grill, releasing a smell that turned my stomach for the first time in years. The detective's eyes came back to me and held. She didn't say it, but the question sat there between us as steady as furniture. If not here, then where? I didn't answer out loud. Not yet.
Quinn's eyes kept drifting to the staircase like it was a sentence that needed finishing. I could feel the house waiting with her. The fan above us, the quiet lamp, the backpack empty on the table like a diagram of my life. What was I supposed to do? Stand here and let the lie repopulate every room? Detective, I said, my voice low enough to belong in my own house. If you're still looking, you might try the middle dresser drawer in my son's room. Logan's head snapped toward me. You can't, he started, then swallowed it down so fast the word turned into nothing. Quinn didn't change expression. Mr. Mercer, she said, this time to Logan, will you consent to a brief check of that dresser? It's harassment, he said, moving to block the hallway with a stance he'd copied from some show. You have no right. Quinn's gaze skimmed from his shoes to his jaw, then back to me. Given the report you made, the specificity of your claim, and the absence of the item where you directed us, she said evenly, we have reasonable grounds to look where a described item might reasonably be. She gestured to Officer Soto. Let's be quick. We went up single file. Quinn first, then Soto, then me. Logan 2 steps behind me, his breath heavy, Allie clutching the banister like a prop. The 3rd step squeaked, and I watched Logan flinch because even the house was betraying him now. In the bedroom, the evening light ran in a thin stripe across the carpet. On the dresser sat their wedding photo. In it, I was smiling, a man between a past he trusted and a future he hadn't met yet. Soto opened the middle drawer with 2 fingers. The wood sighed. Rolled socks, gym shorts, a messy pile that looked like life lived with the drawer half closed. He didn't rummage. He slid a hand under the top layer, felt, and paused. The dark tissue paper looked harmless in his palm,
until it wasn't. Quinn took a step closer. Soto loosened the paper just enough for the thing inside to flash its cold, expensive light. A pear-cut stone set in platinum, not a trinket you misplace or forget. He rewrapped it like you'd rewrap a wound, and then he slipped it into a small evidence bag, sealing it with a quiet click my ears will replay long after the rest of this fades. Logan said, "That's not mine," too quickly. Then, "He planted it," louder, pointing past the evidence bag to me, like volume could bend reality. Allie's hand flew to her mouth a beat late, the kind of gesture you practice in a mirror and never imagine using. Quinn didn't look at me. She looked at Logan. "You reported that you saw this in your father's bag. You directed us to a pocket where it was not found. It is now in your dresser. At this time, you're being detained on suspicion of filing a false report and possession of stolen property." She turned him gently, businesslike, and Officer Soto read him his rights in the steady rhythm of a man who has done it often enough to respect the words. The sound of the cuffs startled something deep and old in me. I had taught this boy to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to ease a baseball into a glove without slapping the leather. Now another adult was teaching him limits I couldn't make stick. If I was wrong, what would that make me? But I wasn't wrong. The room had answered for me. Allie stumbled back to the bed and sat, both palms flat on the coverlet where she needed the quilt to hold her down. "Logan," she whispered, the performance drained out of her, "what did you do?" He twisted to find me over his shoulder, an old child's reflex hunting for a parent to step between him and the consequence. "Dad, say something," he demanded, voice cracking on the last word as if the body had finally noticed what the mouth was doing. I didn't move. There are moments when love is the same shape as stillness. "I told the truth when you asked. I'm telling it now." They walked him past the wedding photo. The grill hissed in the distance like rain that wasn't coming. Quinn paused at the threshold. "Mr. Mercer," she said, tone clipped but not unkind, "we'll need a statement after we secure the scene. A detective will contact you tonight or in the morning." Downstairs, the living room looked ransacked, even though it wasn't. My tools spread out, the backpack gaping, the pie sweating under the dome, steaks abandoned to char. As they took Logan out through the front, a few neighbors pretended not to look from their porches. The slammed car door didn't sound like a door. It sounded like a season ending. The silence after they left was ugly and total. Allie sobbed for real now, messy and human, and I felt a tiny mercy I didn't expect, a loosening in my chest that wasn't forgiveness, but wasn't vengeance either. She wiped her face with the paper towel I handed her and couldn't meet my eyes. "I thought the job offer was real," she said into the towel. "I wanted it to be." She laughed once, strangled. "He said Northline Tech was a fresh start." I wanted it too. Wanting doesn't change the facts. Headlights washed across the curtains and then clicked dark. A knock sounded on the side door, two short, one long. The pattern Evan uses so he doesn't startle me. He stepped in cautiously, stiff at the knee, cop eyes doing a slow sweep before his neighbor eyes softened. "You okay?" he asked, and when he saw the table, he didn't wait for an answer. "I can come back."
"Stay," I said. "Please." He nodded to Allie, introduced himself with the gentleness of a man who's delivered bad news for a living. And then he pulled out a chair and sat at the coffee table like we were going to map a plumbing fix. Old habits resurfaced. He took out a small spiral notebook from his jacket. Nothing official, just a place to trap facts. "Tell it straight," he said. I did. The text with the offer, the haircut, the grilling, the glimpse through the glass, the dark tissue paper, the ring's weight, my choice, the officer's search, the drawer. As I talked, Evan built a timeline in block letters. 3 p.m., job site. 5 p.m., arrive. 5:30 p.m., grill.
5:45 p.m. observed bag. 6:05 p.m. ring moved. 6:20 p.m. call/arrival. 6:35 p.m. find. He didn't comment. He underlined twice where he needed to remember. When I finished, he nodded once like the shape of it made professional sense, even if the content broke his neighbor heart. Silver and Sage was hit yesterday, he said quietly. Saw it on the scanner. Smash and grab, one display, 3 pieces missing. Pear cut platinum was listed first in the bolo. That matches? I nodded. He tapped the notebook. Okay. He turned to Allie, not unkind. Any chance he's hooked into Riverview? Cards? Lines of credit? I'm not here to pry for the department. I'm here because Hank is my friend, and the truth helps both of you. She stared at the towel in her hands until it stopped being a towel and started being something to hide in. He said he could flip a loss into a win, she whispered. He'd been going up there more. I saw a notice from a card I didn't recognize. He said it was nothing. She looked up, the mascara finally doing what it had threatened to do all day. I didn't know about the ring. Evan's pencil made a small mark. Northline Tech? He asked. I showed him an email. Logo looked clean, but the numbers were a little too perfect. Benefits read like a brochure. Could be legit, could be a template. Wouldn't be the first time a desperate man printed his own future on a borrowed printer. He flipped a page. Motives line up. Debt, panic, easy fence on high-value items if the heat shifts to somebody else. Your no last night closed the usual cash spigot, so he needed a bigger pipe fast. The offer gives him a halo and a reason to be elsewhere when the robbery went down. Planting evidence in your bag ends with you in a holding cell and him inheriting your house if you catch a felony and lose your pension. He let the ugly math sit there until it stopped echoing. Allie pressed the towel into both eyes. He told me tonight would fix everything. Evan's voice softened to something that could pass for mercy. He said, tonight will fix some things, not the way he meant. I gathered the tools from the table, each one singed with a memory now, each one a piece of me I refused to let this night own. I put them back in the bag methodically. The world shrank to tasks. Clear the coffee table, turn off the grill, cover the steaks I couldn't eat, opened a window to let the burned sugar smell out. Evan stood and squeezed my shoulder once, firm, a promise without words. I'll call a friend at the county in the morning, not to interfere, just to make sure your statement and the timeline land with the right ears. 88 Pike is sharp, she'll see the structure here. After he left, the house exhaled. Allie packed a small tote in silence. Cosmetics, a hoodie, her charger, and paused at the doorway. I'm going to my sister's. I'll give you space. She searched my face for permission that wasn't hers to ask. Hank, I'm sorry. I nodded. Sorry covered a lot and nothing. When the door clicked shut behind her, I found myself in the middle of the living room, the old lamp throwing a warm circle on the rug, and I realized this was the exact spot where my life had shifted from maybe to now. What kind of father sets the hook that catches his own child before the law does? The kind who finally understands that surviving your love for someone sometimes means stepping out of its way.
3 weeks later, I stood outside Haddon Ridge County Court in a suit that still remembered Diana's funeral. The tie felt like a thin leash around my throat. I kept my hands folded so they wouldn't fidget and watched people flow through the glass doors, jurors with coffee, clerks with clipboards, a man in steel-toe boots who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Evan met me on the steps, his knees stiff in the chill. He handed me a peppermint like we were going to a ball game. 88 Pike will keep it clean, he said. Just answer what's asked. Inside, the courtroom looked smaller than on TV. No swelling music, no echoing speeches, just wood and fluorescent light and the dry rasp of paper. A square of plexiglass on the evidence cart held a small, sealed bag with a number written in careful marker. The ring looked colder under the fluorescent bulbs, pear-cut facets catching light that didn't belong to anyone. I sat behind the rail and made myself breathe like a person who trusts his lungs. When they brought Logan in, the clink of the cuffs was a sound I will remember longer than any sentence read from a bench. He scanned the room until he found me, then looked away, jaw set in that stubborn angle he practiced as a teenager when he didn't want to take out the trash. Allie sat 2 rows back with her hands in her lap and a church-tired face. I felt the brief, useless urge to borrow time and go back a year and say something so right it would heal the future. ADA Lauren Pike was smaller than I expected and sharper. She laid out a timeline with the steadiness of a carpenter, exhibit numbers instead of nails, witness names instead of studs. First, the owner of Silver and Sage Jewelers identified the ring in the smashed display case from photographs. Then the technician from the city's traffic cams matched a dark sedan near the alley with a partial plate that pointed to the car Logan borrowed from a friend. A store camera angled just high enough to catch a man in a hoodie, but it caught his shoes perfectly. Gray trainers with a torn seam near the toe. Photos from my house later that evening showed the same tear when Logan stood on my patio. It wasn't a movie reveal. It was the ordinary math of facts, as they add, then refuse to subtract. Pike called Detective Quinn, who testified cleanly, how she got the call, how my son's statement directed them to the backpack, how the search produced tools and no jewelry, how reasonable cause led to a brief check of the dresser drawer, how Officer Soto recovered the tissue-wrapped ring and bagged it in my living room, sealing the chain of custody then and there. The evidence bag on the cart mirrored her words, like a quiet nod. Did the defendant appear familiar with the location of the alleged item in his father's bag? Pike asked. Yes, Quinn answered. He directed me to a precise pocket. And was the item found there? No. Evan sat so still beside me that I could almost hear him counting beats. When Pike called for me, I walked to the witness stand with my palms open, like honesty could be seen at 10 paces. I spoke in measurements and times because that's how my mind makes truth behave. 5 p.m. arrival, 5:45 p.m. observed insertion of a tissue-wrapped object into my backpack, 6:05 p.m. removal and relocation upstairs, middle drawer, left side, beneath rolled socks, 6:20 p.m. patrol units at the gate, 6:35 p.m. recovery by Officer Soto. I kept my voice even. I did not look at my son unless a question required it. How do you tell a courtroom you love the person you're testifying against without cheapening both words? The defense attorney tried to pull the thread Pike had knotted. Was it possible I planted the ring in my son's drawer to retaliate for a family argument? He said grudge as if it was a physical object I'd cupped on a shelf. No, I said. I watched him place something in my bag. I removed that something and put it in the drawer. I didn't buy it, steal it, or fabricate it. The jurors watched my hands as I spoke, not my eyes. I was grateful for that. Detective Quinn's search confirmed the absence first. The drawer was a suggestion after that. He pressed, perhaps I'd staged the whole thing. What would that get me? I asked, not to be clever, but because I needed the question out loud. What father wants this? Pike's redirect was brief. Mr. Mercer, did you receive any benefit from informing police about the location of the ring?
No, I said. I lost my son. They called Allie. She folded small on the stand, voice fraying at the edges. She admitted to knowing about gambling at Riverview Casino, about late notices, about the email from Northline Tech that, under subpoena, traced back to a free template edited from a library computer. She said Logan told her the ring would fix everything. She said she wanted to believe him more than she wanted to ask how belief works. Pike didn't push harder than needed. The truth had more weight when it wasn't heaved. The last pieces were boring and devastating in the same breath. A bank investigator with statements that showed 3 maxed cards and cash advances. A tech from the jeweler's alarm company placing the break at 2:14 p.m. Cell tower pings that didn't care about alibis. An HR rep from the real Northline Tech reading a brief letter,
No position offered, no interview scheduled, no record of application. Each witness was a tiny hammer tapping the same nail until it seated. When closing arguments ended, Judge Elaine Park looked down at the stack on her bench as if it were a story that had told itself. She called a recess long enough for me to walk to the hallway and stare at the vending machine glass until I recognized the man in the reflection again. What was I supposed to hope for? That the gavel would sound like mercy? That a sentence could turn a son back into the boy who chased grounders until the streetlights blinked? Back in, Judge Park read the verdicts: guilty of second-degree robbery, guilty of possession of stolen property, guilty of filing a false report. The words sat flat in the room. She sentenced him to 5 years in state custody, credit for time served, mandated restitution to Silver and Sage. She turned to Allie on a lesser count, arising from her statement the night of the arrest: 2 years probation, community service, counseling, and an order to establish independent housing within 30 days. The gavel clicked once. It did not echo. It simply marked the spot where a path split. Logan's eyes found mine only as they were turning him. The look wasn't hatred or appeal. It was a boy at a fence, realizing the other side isn't a yard, but a road. I didn't stand. I didn't wave. Love held its shape as stillness again. Afterward, Pike shook my hand, brief and sincere. "Mr. Mercer, I'm sorry the right outcome hurts like this." I believed her. Evan and I walked down the steps without talking. The sky was the same pale blue as the afternoon they found the ring in the drawer. The world doesn't change color to suit your heartbreak. Practical things ate the next weeks, because grief is greedy, and chores are the only thing it can't digest. I met with Tessa Morales, the realtor, at my kitchen table, the same place I'd said no, and we spread comps and disclosures like placemats. We patched the nail holes where photos had hung, replaced a cracked outlet cover, and scuffed magic eraser near the smudges near light switches. I called the pension office, put freezes on my credit, updated beneficiaries, changed the passcode on the garage keypad Diana picked. I boxed up Logan's baseball glove with the worn pocket and labeled it with his name because I didn't trust what I might do if I found it by accident in a year. An offer came in from a young couple with a baby who gripped my thumb with the fierce authority of the new. I accepted. On closing day, the house smelled like Murphy oil soap and winter sun. Tessa slid the papers across. I signed Hank Mercer over and over until it looked like a word in a language I used to speak. I set the keys and the garage remote on the counter and took one last tour through the rooms. The dent in the couch cushion where Diana watched detective shows. The scuff in the hallway where Logan once dragged a hockey stick. The spot on the rug where I stood when the life I thought I had ended and the one I actually lived began. "Mesa Vista," Tessa said when we got to the door. "Dry heat, big skies." "Smaller noise," I said. In the driveway, Evan hugged me in that stiff, man-practical way that says everything in the squeeze and nothing in the words. "Text me when you hit state line. I'll pretend I'm not timing you." I climbed into my pickup, turned the key, and felt the engine settle into a hum I could trust. I wasn't escaping anything. I was choosing what to carry forward. Sometimes that's all the justice you get on this side of a bench.
The morning I left Haddon Ridge, the house was already somebody else's and everything but muscle memory. I still reached for the switch by the old pantry instead of the one by the door. Still paused at the hall where Diana's framed print used to hang. The rooms echoed differently without our things. Even the refrigerator hummed like it had changed its mind about being useful here. I locked the front door from the inside, set the keys on the kitchen counter alongside the garage remote and the stamped envelope for the buyers, and took one last slow look at the dent in the couch cushion where Diana watched detective shows. It felt like stepping out of a photograph.
Evan stood in the driveway with a paper bag of road snacks and a grin that wouldn't embarrass either of us. "You'll hate the first 10 quiet breakfasts," he said, handing over pretzels and a thermos of coffee. "After that, you'll be impossible to reach before 9. "I've never been impossible to reach," I said, letting him pull me into that quick man hug that says more with shoulder pressure than big words. He thumped the side of the truck like you do to check a watermelon. "Text when you hit state line." Allie came by early with a cardboard box and a folded note. She'd found some of Logan's baseball cards wedged behind the spare room dresser and tucked them in carefully, as if gentleness could backdate our lives. "I'm moving in with my sister until I figure things out," she said, eyes steady for the first time in weeks. "Probation starts Monday. I hope Mesa Vista is kind to you." "I hope Haddon Ridge is kind to you," I answered. She handed me the note without asking me to read it there. The paper felt like truce. We stood awkwardly for a few seconds and then didn't, because that's how grief and decency take turns. Highway 80 slid under my tires, cornfields loosening into brown and gold, then a long ribbon of amber land that didn't care who I had been. The truck cab smelled like coffee and motor oil. I kept the radio low and the windows cracked until the wind got bossy. At a rest stop in Kansas, I ate Evan's pretzels and watched a father teach his kid to work the soda machine. Quarters, buttons, the tiny triumph of cold sugar in a paper cup. I tried not to inventory my own losses like receipts. By the time New Mexico opened into hard blue sky and pink rock, the word home started to mean a place with a chair and a light I can control. Mesa Vista was what the listing said it would be: dry heat, big skies, and a street named after something optimistic. Saguaro something with stucco that throws back the sun. My one-bedroom sat on the second floor, clean and empty and smelling faintly of paint and someone else's lemon cleaner. The oising agent showed me the mailbox and the laundry room and the pool I'd never use, then handed me 2 keys on a ring and a welcome packet with coupons for pizza and a plant nursery. Inside, I set the box of first night things on the counter and stood in the doorway because you don't rush your first look at a place you're supposed to heal in. The living room had a long wall that would hold a shelf and a photograph. The bedroom had carpet that would forgive a dropped screw. The kitchen had a small window over the sink with a view of a sliver of sunset and the top of a palm tree that had decided to live. I opened every cabinet and closed them again, testing hinges, listening for the language of the apartment. Blinds that tick in the heat, an air conditioner that rumbles and then remembers how to purr. I unrolled the rug I'd kept and centered the old floor lamp, Diana's reading light, near the window. I set her ceramic bowl on the kitchen counter with the spare change and the keys that didn't go to anything anymore. I folded the blue Sparrow dish towel over the oven handle and felt my chest try a new kind of breathing. I didn't hang pictures that first night. I leaned them against the wall like friends waiting to be introduced. What do you do with love that has nowhere to land? You give it small jobs. I put the screws and nails into a clear jar labeled repair. I made a list for the hardware store: dowels, picture hangers, felt pads for furniture feet. I walked to the corner market for milk and eggs and a bag of oranges too heavy for one hand. I bought a plant I couldn't name because something green deserves a chance to learn my routine. When the sun went down, the desert did that trick where it turns the air soft and the sky purple. I sat on the unpacked box labeled books and let the room make its first impression on me. The next day, I assembled the small table I'd found on a resale site. The instructions were all pictures and optimism. The Allen wrench slipped and I swore softly in a voice Diana would have laughed at. By afternoon, I had a place to eat and a chair that didn't wobble. I took a picture and texted it to Evan with a caption that said, "Level." He responded with a photograph of his breakfast plate, perfectly centered on his table because friendship knows how to send a joke without words.
A letter from Haddon Ridge County arrived, forwarded through the leasing office. Thin envelope, official seal. Restitution paperwork. Payment schedule. A line about visitation protocols if I chose to participate. I set it under the ceramic bowl and didn't touch it until morning. When I did, I read it twice and put it in a file labeled Logan. I don't know when I'll visit. I don't know what I'd say that the courtroom silence didn't shape better than speech. But I wrote a postcard anyway, a photo of a saguaro at sunset, and kept it in a drawer in case a sentence worth sending showed up. On day 4, I found a community woodshop in the back of a senior center with a sign that said members only and a volunteer named Joe who asked me if I knew the difference between a Forstner bit and a spade bit. "Do you?" he added with a grin that didn't mind either answer. "I do," I said, and joined. I learned the names of 3 men who come every Wednesday morning to make birdhouses we don't need and a walnut box no one has ordered yet. My hands remembered they know how to make straight things when life refuses. When the first monsoon storm shouldered in, thunder like furniture moving upstairs, rain that fell in confident sheets, I stood by the window and watched the desert pretend to be green. The smell of wet dust came through the screen like a story I'd once heard. I thought about Haddon Ridge and Mrs. Randall's porch light and the baseball glove I labeled with Logan's name and didn't bring. I thought about the young couple who now lived where I used to. I hoped their refrigerator hum sounded like usefulness, not memory. Some nights are easy, and some crowd up with old rooms. I've learned to set out tomorrow's coffee cup before I go to bed, not because it saves time, but because it convinces the morning to arrive. On the 7th night, I slept through until 5:30 and woke to a square of pale light on the carpet, shaped like the new window. The quiet didn't press, it opened. I made scrambled eggs in a pan that was finally mine, ate at the table that didn't wobble, and listened to the hum of the apartment figure out my steps. How do you start saying your name without adding father as an apology? Slowly, out loud, then quieter, but steadier. Near the end of the week, the leasing office called to say I had a small package. It was from Evan. A battered paperback of desert hikes, a keychain shaped like a saguaro, and a note with a single sentence. Boundaries are just good fences you can still talk over. I hung the keychain by the door and laughed in the clean air, and because there was no one there to hear it, the laugh belonged entirely to me. On Sunday, I drove out to a mesa the book said was moderate. The path was dusty and kind, polite switchbacks offering views that asked for attention and nothing else. At the top, I sat on a flat rock and ate an orange, letting the peel oil my fingers with citrus. I could see so far that my old life looked like a thumbprint on glass I hadn't noticed in months. I sat there a long time, not thinking forgiveness or anger, just inventorying the ways breath enters and leaves a person who is not done yet. I came home and hung one picture. Diana on a windy pier in a denim jacket, hair lifted, eyes narrowed against bright. I placed the level on top of the frame and adjusted until the bubble centered. When it did, I stepped back and let the room absorb it. The blue sparrow towel hung straight on the oven handle. The plant reached a little toward the window. The apartment hummed with the small noises of a place I could learn to like. I didn't say anything out loud, because some prayers do better without words. I used to think endings announced themselves with trumpets, or at least a door slam that rattled the pictures. This one didn't. It unspooled quietly. One boundary, one locked door, one long drive toward a sky that refused to lean in and listen. If you're waiting for a tidy moral, I don't have it. The best I can offer is that there are days when love looks like repair, and days when repair looks like leaving the tool on the bench and walking outside. I still talk to Diana sometimes, though less like a ghost and more like a habit that makes me humane. I tell her when the coffee is good when the monsoon pretends the world is new, when I was proud of keeping my mouth shut during a moment that wanted me loud. I tell her when I miss the creak of our hallway and when Mesa Vista feels like a place I might deserve. If she answers, she does it through the level bubble, now centered, now not, now centered again. I think about Logan in measured doses, like a strong medicine you can't take on an empty stomach. The words 5 years have the kind of gravity you don't outrun. You step around them and learn new paths. I'm not done being his father. I'm done being his alibi. Those truths can coexist without destroying each other. And that, more than anything, is the lesson I didn't want, but got anyway. If you're where I was, counting rescue missions, calling them love, maybe start by setting out tomorrow's coffee cup. Let the morning arrive because you invited it. Make a list that says what you will and won't do. Practice saying your name without explaining it. Walk a moderate trail, eat an orange. Hold a picture level and adjust until the bubble settles. Sometimes the smallest, squarest things are how we ask our lives to be kind again.